Hello, my guest this week on Midland Sports Scrapbook was born in the Black Country, where he learnt to kick a ball so well that it gave him a career as a professional footballer. Nowadays, among other things, he's a licensed agent. Is that poacher turned gamekeeper, or is it the other way about? We'll find out as we welcome Mel Eves to the studio. Mel, welcome to the programme. Black Country boy through and through, aren't you?
Yeah, born just down the road in Darlaston, actually, Bob. So, and then I was in Darlaston until I was about 7, moved to Wensfield, which is on the edge of Wolverhampton, and was fortunate to play for the team that I supported. You know, I was brought up as a Wolves supporter.
Who do you remember going to watch as a boy then?
I think we mentioned before, Terry Wharton, Bobby Thompson. It was the early 60s when I first went. I was about 7 years old. And a few years later when there was Derek Dougan, John Richards, Dave Wagstaff, really good memories. And then to go on and then actually play with some of these guys that I watched from the terraces was
quite something,
was awesome. Yeah.
I said you kicked a ball so well that you became a professional footballer. How young were you, do you think, when Mum and Dad said, I think Mel might have a career as a footballer?
I don't think that they were always very supportive, but they kind of let me do it. I didn't have a dad that kind of brought me there and then told me what to do and was watching every game. Because he was, a lot of the time, he ran a pub. I was born in a pub, and he ran a pub, so a lot of the time he didn't come to watch me play. I found out later he probably watched me more than he let on.
Yeah.
But it was great because I just got on with it. But I think they probably realised when I was probably about 10 or 11.
So primary school, did the sports teacher think you got a bit of promise?
I think so. I think there were 3. We had a really good team, really good football team at Weldon Avenue Junior School, where I went in Wensfield. And when the headmaster came in and he asked the usual question to all the pupils, the boys and the girls, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, obviously, going back a bit, you'd get, I want to be a train driver or an engineer, whatever. You don't get that so much now.
No.
But 3 of the lads, including me, said, I want to be a professional footballer. So I think it was the seeds were sown then.
Did the other 2 make it?
The other 2 didn't quite make it, but very good footballers. But they didn't make it as professionals. But I remember that very distinctly. So I think.
So in that junior school team then, was the goal scorer every week when they read out in assembly we won 5-0 and Mel Eves scored 4 of them?
Yeah, I remember getting. I remember the sports teacher who was the teacher in the 4th year, which is the last year when you're 10 or 11 before you go to the senior school, and I remember him coming up to me once and saying, "You can have my season ticket for the Wolves because I'm not going there because
Wow.
I'd scored 10 goals in the one game."
10?
10. I think we'd won.
I did you down by saying 4 then, didn't I?
And so he gave me his season ticket.
That was quite something.
That was the first time, and we sat in the Waterloo Road stand. First time I'd actually sat down to watch a game because I used to stand in the North Bank. So that was quite funny. So they didn't sing in the stand, which was great. So it was all very quiet, but it was a great experience. But that was the first. I remember that.
I mean, did he say, look, you know, you quite apart from these goals, did he think that there was something a bit extra to your game that you could make it?
I don't think that was ever discussed about. I think it would be more so now. There wasn't a situation where the clubs have academies now where you can be associated with a club and signed up for one of the academies, whether it be Villa, Blues, Wolves, West Brom. It from age 6 and 7 now, but that wasn't the case then.
I mean, I know the ages we're talking about, because it was sort of like mid-60s, wasn't it? We're talking about when
Yeah.
you were moving to senior school. There were still grammar schools around, and they played rugby. So how did you get on then as a boy who wanted the round ball, not the oval ball?
Yeah, well, fortunately, I remember when we took the 11 plus, that the headmaster said, put as your first choice down Wolverhampton Grammar School, because as well as it being good academically, they play football, not rugby. Whereas the local school, Wensfield High School, at that time, I think they play football now, but
Yeah.
at that time, they played rugby. So fortunately, I passed the 11 plus, went to the grammar school and played football there, which was great.
So how quickly, I mean, there you are at 11, going up to big school. How quickly did they realise that they got a potential pretty decent player on their hands?
Well, when we go in, the first thing that you do is you have the football trial. They put football trials on for the new boys coming in, and I was the only one to get picked to play in the under-13s, which was the first and second years. I think I'm not sure what it is now, year 8 and 9 or whatever.
Yes.
So I was the only first year, the new boy, to play with the second years. And then a couple of years later, I actually played for the first team, which is the up to 18 years old. And then I went on there. So I suppose they knew then that I was probably got something about me. Yeah.
You're damning yourself with faint praise there. You clearly were a more than decent player, weren't you? If you were going to get elevated at that amount, at that level, and that age.
Yeah. I'd always got. I didn't think. As I say, because the situation is different now, in that the clubs don't. You couldn't be affiliated. You could be affiliated with a club, but you couldn't be signed for a club as they are now, as the boys are now. I feel there's so much pressure on the boys, and the parents, for that matter, that it was totally different when I played. And a lot of the things have been changes for the better. Some, in my opinion, not so. Because of that, the extra pressure that's put on the boys and the parents in making decisions as well.
Quite often when you talk to players from your era and they say, oh, in those days I wasn't a centre forward, I played at centre half or whatever else, for those who know what a centre half is. Where did you play in those days?
I always played up front.
Yeah.
I always played up front, and
got a few goals?
I got a lot of goals, yeah.
I mean in the senior team when you got into it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think then there was a lovely man who's no longer with us, who spent many years in different fields and ended up as chief scout at Wolves, Joe Gardner. Lovely man, and I know he was the one that scouted
me
at Wolves. Yeah.
And what age was that? Do you know when he first saw you?
I would have thought he's probably 15, 16 that I started going down to. Maybe even 14, 15, 16. I started going down to Wolves.
Do you remember
occasionally on just in the week on a Tuesday night, Thursday night.
Do you remember the first point of contact that he made with your parents? I mean, was it a knock on the door, showed him his card, and?
I can't remember at all now. I can't remember that.
I'm trying to, envisage your excitement at this.
Yeah. And again, it took some time for it to all kind of sink in, and I just kind of carried on with things. Because then you get the next thing was to play for the county, as it was Staffordshire then, not West Midlands, before they did the reorganisation. To play for Staffordshire, which included, we were South Staffs in Wolverhampton. And then you got North Staffs was more Stoke based. And then I remember then getting a call up to the England team, the England schoolboys. But when I played for England schoolboys, even at probably 17, 18, when I was in the sixth form at the grammar school, I hadn't been given a contract by Wolves.
Really?
So I just, And I was when in the sixth form you do the university choices, don't you? The Hooker form.
Yeah.
And I said, well, there's no point me doing the Hooker form. I'm going to play football.
Yeah.
Without even they hadn't said that. I wasn't told. I wasn't given a contract.
And you didn't
or
go and
whatever.
ask, presumably.
Hmm?
You
I
wouldn't
didn't
have.
ask. No.
No.
I just felt, well, I'm going to
So you
play
got into
football.
the sixth form, so you'd obviously done quite well with your O levels along the way, did you?
Yeah, I got about 8 O levels.
Yeah.
And
About 8 years.
and at the grammar school, it had such a good time that you never felt that unless you actually failed your O levels, you just naturally stayed on. And because I actually played for the youth team, Wolves youth team, and the reserves while I was still in the sixth form, then I got the best of both worlds. I think the big thing was that I wasn't as fit as the other boys that had started at 16, because they got 2 years of full-time training. I think that told when I actually joined Wolves.
So you played for England
Straight from
schoolboys
school.
then. Who was in the team then?
There was a boy called, the only one that made the team was Gary Mabbott's older brother.
Yeah.
It was Terry Mabbott,
Yeah.
who played for Bristol City.
Yeah.
Went on to play for Bristol
Yeah.
City. And there was probably another Scouse lad who I think played a bit lower down for Tranmere. But apart from that, I can't remember any of the other boys
No. Because
in my year that played.
the casualty rate at that stage is extraordinarily high, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see teams that win youth cups for clubs,
Yeah.
and you look 5 years on, and there's probably one left or two left, and they've gone and played in non-league or disappeared. Why does that happen?
It's just, it is difficult, and this is why I'm kind of referring back to nowadays, Bob, in that you've got so many boys that are taken on by the clubs at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and so there's a massive base of players because the clubs, in my opinion, sometimes kind of trawl the players, thinking, well, we're
going to get one or two out of them.
We're going to get one or two out of this, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then all their hopes are built up, especially the parents, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The hopes are built up, and then it just narrows down. Every year, it just gets narrower and narrower. And then even at 18, people then drop off.
Huge casualty rate,
and
isn't
then there's
there?
a huge casualty rate. The 16 to 18, I always say, is a big learning curve. But then 18 to 21 is the biggest one.
Yeah.
And if you've not really done it by the time you're 21, you're very rare. There are always going to be exceptions that are late starters. But if you're not really there by 21, you're not going to do it.
How was the England schoolboy experience for you then? Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, that was smashing. Yeah. We just played a couple of games when I played against Wales and Scotland. So, but that was great.
And were you a hero back at school, were you? Because you'd done this?
I don't know. I mean, the one thing about the grammar school is that if you probably got a place at Oxford or Cambridge, I think that was treated a lot better than if you played football for England because it's very academically based, the grammar school. So I don't think it was seen as it was not as elevated as it probably would do in another school. Yeah.
So the headmaster stood in assembly and at the end of it said, "Oh, and by the way, Eves played for England schoolboys at the weekend." Was that what it?
Well, that would have probably been it as a throwaway. Yeah.
But I mean, who was managing the England schoolboys then? Do you remember who it was?
I can't remember, to be perfectly
Didn't make
honest.
much of an impression on you, any, but
No.
never mind. But as you say, Wolves did come calling, and you got that opportunity.
Yeah.
Was that like, wow? Did you feel then at that age, because you're still very young? Did you feel you'd made it?
No, I think it was just a natural progression. And I was 18, still very wet behind the ears, coming out of the grammar school. And the big thing, I was a little bit in awe when I've said, obviously, a good friend of yours and mine, John Richards, was like God. The only one that probably wasn't there from the team that had won the 1974 League Cup final because I joined a year afterwards in '75, was Derek Dugan, who just retired about 2 months before I started. He retired at the end of the previous season in '75. So apart from the Doog, everybody else, from Phil Parkes that you'd know, Willie Carr, Frank Munro, John McCall, Derek Parkin.
You must have been wide-eyed at 18 going in and looking at them.
Just to actually train with these guys, not first of all, not on a regular basis because they were in the first team, but obviously you'd be around. You'd be in the building with them, and you'd see them every now and again, and sometimes you'd join in training with them. But it was brilliant.
What a start. Mel Eves for the moment. We'll take a break and we'll talk some more afterwards. So there you are, you've joined Wolves, you are 18. You looked around, you saw these big names, and of course you got to meet the manager, Bill McGarry.
Yeah, I think that went in with Chief Scout Joe Gardner, took me in there. This was just before we'd started the season, so signed my contract. I got a 1-year contract on not a lot of money, I think it was about 30 odd quid a week or something. And yeah, I think it was £35. And £5 if played in the reserves. And it took me into the manager's office, contracts there, and I think all I got was a kind of a gruff acknowledgement from Bill McGarry, and I think the words of similar going, "Oh well, all the best, son, and you've got a chance now," and that was it. And I think that was about virtually any time I spoke to Bill then, because I was nowhere near the first team, obviously, when I started.
You said that when you played with the England schoolboys, because you were still at school, your fitness levels weren't what they were. What were the early days like at Molineux then?
Oh, well, I suddenly realised that obviously all the other boys, the first year, because I'll be what you would class as a first year professional. So all the other boys, the first year pros, had obviously had 2 years full-time training as an apprentice. And that showed. Really, all I did, I think, was sleep a lot, train, drink and eat when I could, and that was it. And I think for the first 6 months, at least, the first half of the season, that's all I was doing, just to get anywhere near the fitness levels of the other boys.
So who were the other youngsters then who were around that age with you?
There were people like Jerry O'Hara, Martin Patching, George Berry, Bob Hazel. They were all kind of in my contemporaries at that age.
George must have kept it fairly lively for you.
Yeah. I mean, it was great. I mean, I got on great. I was very friendly with George and Bob, still am. And Jerry O'Hara, of course, got on great with Jerry. Jerry actually went to one of the other schools in Wolverhampton, St Chad's, and he did the apprenticeship, so he was a couple of years ahead of me, and he got his first team debut before I did. But unfortunately, I know he got an injury which curtailed his career. But yeah, a lot of good players.
So you had to wait a couple of years, didn't you, for your debut? You were I'm guessing, just turned 22 when you made your first appearance.
Well, I just turned 21. Yeah.
21 was it? Yes.
And which nowadays would be classed as probably a little bit old, but I played the first season, as I say, I was virtually playing with the intermediate team, which is on a Saturday morning mainly, and on Saturday afternoons with the 4th and 5th teams. I then broke into the reserves the following year and was top scorer, played virtually every game in the reserves, and then started off the next season in the reserves and was scoring more or less every other week. And that kind of pushed me to the front. But you've got to remember that Wolves were at the top, were one of the best teams in the country, still are, but were probably one of the top 10, if not top 6 teams in the country. And they'd got a very, very good side. And so to get anywhere near the first team, you had to be a good player.
So when you were scoring these goals in the reserves, did it come naturally? I presume it must have come naturally to you scoring goals.
Yeah, and the reserve football then was a little bit different to what it is now. And I've commented on this before, that the reserves then was a proper reserve side. You know, you played. I remember playing against the likes of Liverpool or Man United, and you've got virtually all, most of the team had played in the first team, and you've got a mixture of players coming back from injury, players on the edge of things, and youngsters coming through. Whereas now a lot of it is what you would class as under 21s. But
So
it was proper
yeah.
reserve team football. Then.
So who was Wolves manager then when you got your first start?
Sammy Chung had taken over from Bill McGarry, and Sammy was a great coach, and it was Sammy that gave me my debut.
Do you remember the moment when you realised you were going to play 26th of November, wasn't it? 77
It was against Ipswich at Molineux, and it was on a Friday, and they had the habit was that the manager, after training on Friday, would put the team up in the first team dressing room. Somebody'd walk down, whether it be the manager or the secretary would walk down and put the team on the first team dressing room pin board and notice board, and all the lads are looking at it, and there I was, number 10, Eves, number 9 was John Richards.
Wow.
So
what did you think? I mean,
well, yeah,
it was a moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a lump in the old throat. Yeah.
And being partnering John Richards, I mean, my word, how good was that for you?
Well, that was brilliant, because obviously I'd been watching John, and playing with Derek Dugan was probably one of the best partnerships that Wolves have ever had in their history, and was certainly one of the best partnerships in the first division then, which is equivalent to for those that are watching that are younger than 40. It's equivalent to the Premiership now.
That's
not
right.
Div 3.
Yes. Yeah.
So to play with somebody that I admired for so long from the terraces was awesome. Yeah.
Was it an arm round the shoulders from him before the game? Because you
Yeah.
must have. How nervous were you?
It was. Yeah. I think there's a mixture of faith in your own ability, because you've actually earned the right. Which I had. I'd been knocking on the door for some time. I'd been on the bench. I'd actually been a sub before, about a season or so before, at Nottingham Forest, and didn't get on. And there was only one sub, and I did.
Yeah, I'd say those were the days. Just one substitute.
Yeah, one sub, and I never got on. And then, so to actually eventually make my debut was, I think I'd earned it. And
did it go well?
It went well, yeah. Even though it was no goals, I felt that I did okay.
Good enough to keep your place in the team?
I kept my place in the team for about 4 or 5 games, and then, as a lot of times, I think we'd lost 4-0 we went to Newcastle, St James's Park, and lost 4-0 at Newcastle. And then I think the manager then changed, even though we were under the cosh most of the time, he then changed. I think he had to make a statement and change the 3 or 4, so he put more experienced players in, and I then came. Fortunately, I was then out of the side for a while, but then I came back very strong towards the end of the season, and actually then scored my first goal.
I was going to say, first goal, you must remember it. Talk me through it.
It was at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea. We were 1-0 down, and it was towards, I think, the latter stages of the game when there was 10 or 15 minutes to go, and I scored against the cat, Peter Bonetti.
Peter Bonetti.
And I've got
lives in these parts now, of course.
And I've got a picture of that goal in my office at home, and I know that in the picture, just by me, is the Chelsea captain, who just can't get to the ball before me, and that's Ray Wilkins. And
who gave you the pass, or who was the assist, as they would now say?
I can't remember. I think it was one of those that just...
It just suddenly was there.
It just suddenly was there, and I hit it with my left foot, which was my swinger. It still is my swinger. Unfortunately, he went in the top corner. Yeah. And there's a picture there. John Richards is in the shot. I think Steve Daly's in the shot. Billy Rafferty, who was another striker at Wolves, was in the shot. And Martin Patchin.
What a moment here.
I think there's... one of the Chelsea players who was trying to stop it as well. I think was Chopper Harris or somebody. I think
You did well to get it in the net before he got to you, then. Didn't
yeah. Fortunately, he wasn't quite close enough. Yeah.
Now, before that season ended, am I right in thinking that you scored against Manchester United as well?
Yeah. Well, I scored against Chelsea, and then the next game was against Manchester United at home on Match of the Day, and I actually scored the winner, and we won 2-1.
Who was the goalkeeper for them that day? Do you remember?
I'm pretty sure that the goalkeeper for Man United that day was. You've got me there, Bob.
Yeah, I can't remember either, and I couldn't find out when I was trying to look a bit earlier. But no matter.
It'll come to me in a minute.
Yeah. Okay. When you remember, let me know. But you scored again, and it was the winner. I mean, that was an even better.
Well, it was
moment,
great. I mean, it was a header from a Derek Parkin cross from the left. And again, probably 10 minutes to go, and to get the winner against Man United on Match of the Day. And Match of the Day then, for people watching now who are under 40, you didn't have every game on.
No,
it was just one game, and then this was the main game. Just one game and another game usually, wasn't there?
Yeah.
So that was great, and then followed that up with the first goal against Villa at Molineux, and we won 3-1. So I scored 3 in 3 games, which then helped because we were towards the bottom of the league, but that made sure that we were safe those 3 games.
And did the dressing room then accept you? Because I know that dressing rooms, it's who's this new kid who's come in taking so-and-so's place.
I think you have to, quite rightly.
You'd earned it then.
Quite rightly, I think you have to earn the right, and I felt a little bit more kind of established then. Which led to a lovely call up to the England B team in that season, 1978. With again John Richards and Steve Daly were both on that tour as well.
That's it makes when you come to it at this stage, you're kind of thinking, well, I did all that and all that period of time. Was there ever a moment then that you thought, I've made it, or were you still?
I don't think it was a case of I've made it. It's a case of, well, there was some kind of tangible reward for where I'd got to in my career at that stage.
And courtesy of Mel Eves. Excellent. Mel, for the moment, thank you. We'll take another break. So, Mel, just to go back to where we were, we think it might have been Alex Stepney in goal for Manchester United.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And might have been Jimmy Rimmer for Aston Villa. So if that's the case, I mean, that's a good class of goalkeeper to have got your early goals against, isn't it, when you're but a lad of 21. Now, move forward a year or two, 1980, of course, League Cup final against Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, that was...
great moment, great day.
That was a great moment in the fact that I'd played a lot of the games in the lead up to there. But I didn't play in the first game in the semi-final against Swindon. I think Dave Thomas, who's the ex-England winger, former England winger from Rangers, QPR, Everton. Yeah. But I did play in the semi-final at Wolves, the return leg, because it was a 2-leg semi-final. And I got the all-important goal that took us into extra time to get it back to 2-1, because we'd lost the first leg 2-1, and then John Richards got the winner in the in extra time to actually see us through to the final. Yeah. But to play against Brian Clough's all-conquering Nottingham Forest at that stage was a great experience, because we were obviously going down as big underdogs. Even though we were having a really good season. And we finished 6th in that season. I think Forest just pipped us, and they're about a point in front of us at 5th. So we were nobody's pushover, and we got a great away record that year. If our record at Molineux would have been anywhere as good, we would have been pushing for the, even a better place with Liverpool and Man United at the top.
But I mean, that was a good dressing room, some good names in there. There must have been a terrific team spirit.
Absolutely. I mean, we'd got I think John Barnwell and Richie Barker were the manager and assistant manager, the management duo,
yeah.
and they complemented each other really well. I mean, Barney was, as you know, was brilliant with the press.
Yeah. Yes. A great favourite of the media.
He would have been absolutely brilliant, and he was very good man manager, kept all the boys in the right spirit. Richie Barker was the more of the tactician and the organiser and the trainer, and he was the disciplinarian, and he got us organised. And don't play Richie's part down. It was absolutely massive the way that he got us organised to win games.
But you get pairs like that. Clough and Taylor is another perfect example.
Absolutely.
And you look at what the job that Brian Clough did at Derby and at Nottingham Forest, and that when Coventry won the cup with John Sillett and George Curtis, they didn't have the greatest team there, but they knew how to handle people, they knew how to handle players, and I'm sure those two did. John particularly. I mean, he'd have been the arm round the shoulder when he thought you needed it, and the sharp word when you needed it as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as I say, Richie took no prisoners on the training ground, but the lads, there was such a good team spirit. The lads appreciated that, and we kind of got knocked into shape as far as how we wanted to play.
I mean, early '82 was when John Barnwell left. The ground itself desperately needed somebody to do it, and it was a signal of the most awful slump, wasn't it? I mean, the club just went. I mean, for somebody who was a dyed-in-the-wool supporter as you were, as well as a player, it must have broken hearts to see what happened.
It was. It was 82 when the first time the club went into administration, and then they had a takeover, and it looked as though it could be the sign of something good when Derek Dougan headed the Batty brothers were behind it and what have you, and then of course what we did, we got an instant lift in 82, 83, but the big thing was that we'd still got a core of senior players, what I call good pros at the club. Andy Gray was still there, John Richards was still there, Kenny Hibbett was still there, Derek Parkin was still there, Jeff Palmer was still there. You know, there was some good quality players still there. And round that, we then fitted in some good young lads coming through. And even though the club didn't spend any money, we just about got just about got the squad, keeping most of the lads fit to do what we did, which was go straight back up. But then, so they got a year's grace, really, the new regime, but everything was totally exposed after that, because there was no investment into the team, and we needed players, and apart from players not coming in, players were going. Andy Gray went to Everton for a cut price fee, and then we all know how well Andy did at Everton. John went to Portugal,
didn't he? Yeah.
John went to Portugal. I went out on loan to Huddersfield because they were trying to get people off the wage bill as well. And then, you know, I came back later that season. But it was, you could see that the writing was on the wall after we got back into the Division 1. And then, as we all know, I mean, you're going to come to it, in that we then went from division all through the 4 divisions, you know, in consecutive seasons, which is, I don't know whether that's a record, Bob, or with any team to do it.
I think there's only one other team that's done it, I think. It was extraordinary, and of course, he so sadly died earlier this year, Sir Jack Hayward. I mean, he came in, he was a fan, wasn't he? He was a fan with money, and he just turned the place around. And you look at the legacy now, it's just simply astonishing, isn't it?
I mean, from my point of view, it was just a big pity that I know Jack was in the wings and with one of the consortiums that had got a chance to take over, and they actually gave it to the Batties were the preferred bidder. But I know Jack could have taken over in '82. So from my point of view, it could have been could have been a lot different. I could have actually stayed at Wolves for a lot longer.
Yeah, as it was.
You never know. But,
No.
but these things happen. But
That's
it was
right.
fortunately for the club, Jack came in at the end, the late 80s, and that was when the turnaround started.
Yeah. You went off to Sheffield United. You were Player of the Year, but by the time you got to 32, you had to retire. You'd had a few injuries along the way, and that's then you. I mean, was there this defining moment when you thought, right, I've done that. What am I going to do now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've been reading a lot and doing a lot regarding life after sport or life after you retire. And I think one of the psychologists was saying that you have two deaths. You have death when you finish your sport, whatever that is, your last race or your last game, and then when you do actually die. But so it's not easy. And you ask, I'm sure you've asked any of the lads, whether it be John Richards or anybody. I know John said it took him at least 3 years to adjust. Yeah.
You haven't got the dressing room, you haven't got the banter, the camaraderie, and everything, have you?
You haven't.
Or the afternoons off, for that matter.
No, your whole schedule is changed. Yeah. You've got a situation where human beings, as we know, are creatures of habit. So you do get into an habitual routine from age 16 or 18 in my case, through to, if you're lucky, which I was, at least you get into your 30s, it's like coming out of school 10, 15, 20 years later than everybody else. But you don't look like a schoolboy. You actually look older. And then people think that you should know what you're doing. But
the truth was you didn't. Yeah.
No, but you don't. It's a bit like coming out of the forces or something.
That's right. It's exactly
it's
the
like
same
being demobbed,
system,
and you've been on for a 10, 15 year stint, and you come out of the forces. You're that used to. You're institutionalised, really.
That's right. Yeah.
You're that used
You're told what to do, when to do it, where to go, etc.
Yeah.
Absolutely true story of John Barnes, when he was at Liverpool, and because the club looked after the passports, he went on holiday with his wife and children, turned up at the airport, they said, passports, please. And he said, I haven't got it. And they said, well, you can't fly if you haven't. He said, oh, I've got it, but I don't keep it. And they kind of looked at him. And of course, they then had to panic call through to Anfield, can we bring Mr. Barnes' passport, please? And he said, it sounds ludicrous. He said that I was, 29, 30.
Yeah.
And, oh, no, I don't keep my passport, I mean, but that is how it is, isn't it?
It is.
It was all done for you. Now, you very much worked in financial services early doors with young players.
Yeah.
Because, and it's even worse now, that they're getting these huge contracts at young ages.
Yeah.
Do we wonder that we get problems with them?
No, because the thing is, emotionally, everybody expects them to be able to handle it. But if you can cast your mind back, and I know I can, to when I was 18, 19, you'd expect it to handle. I could. When I was okay, I could handle 35 quid a week. But you get 35 grand a week. Yeah. Crikey.
What do you do with it? Yeah. And is it difficult to make young players realise? I mean, they always say it's difficult to sell life insurance to somebody under the age of about 40, by which time you say, well, you've got to make it up. But I mean, if you're talking to young players, are they looking at you blankly and thinking, what's this old man talking about? And I don't mean that rudely.
Well, that's right. I mean, I don't talk to the. I mean, I'm not an IFA anymore, so I don't talk to them about. Although I will give general guidance in what.
But when you were doing that,
what they should be looking at. Now.
When you were doing what was the reaction?
That's what I did do, yeah, because I actually went round to a lot of the training grounds, whether it be even at Manchester United. I went up to Sunderland, Newcastle, as well as all the local clubs. And they're pretty good, actually. Most of the lads will
more switched on than you maybe thought.
Will be more switched on than you thought. But what I can say is that the younger ones, there's a massive gap between where they are emotionally and where they are physically. Everybody expects them. They see them doing things on a football pitch and they think they're very mature, but emotionally they're not.
And and isn't the other problem that they're doing all this and they've got all this at 18? It doesn't mean they're going to make a career as a footballer. We talked about England schoolboys earlier, and FA Youth Cup winning teams. Where are they now? They all so many just disappear, don't they?
Well, this is it. I've got a general rule of thumb, as I say, that if you look at a player where they are at 21, 22, not where they are at 16, 18, because players mature at different ages and they come through at different ages. And some can come through early, peak very early, he's going to be a world star, and then just stop or actually just go down and everybody else catches them up. And then conversely, you can get people that maybe mature a little bit later. They then start to be physically, they mature later as well. So they're not built like Wayne Rooney, you see, was very, very physically strong at 16, 17. Yeah. So that's why he could cope with actually playing in the first team. Yeah.
I said right at the start, Mel, that you'd become a licensed agent. And I posed the question, was this poacher turning gamekeeper, or was this gamekeeper going back to being a poacher? What's your take on it?
Well, as I say, what I do is try and pass on. I think what I've come to do more so is pass on my experience of what it is and all the elements to make a player in the first place, for lads to actually achieve their potential. So I do a lot on kind of performance. I do a lot of performance work as far as, especially on attitude. One of my biggest sayings is your attitude determines your altitude, and you will have seen this, Bob. You interview your Andy Grays, your John Richards, your Kenny Hibbett's, your Willie Carrs, your Phil Parks that you were with last week. Great attitudes, very professional, and you will find that it's not just ability. Plenty of players with ability don't make it, Bob. But attitude is the big thing, and emotional intelligence and emotional stability, and then being able to perform under pressure is down to how you control your emotions under pressure. So I've been doing a lot more on that in the last 5 or 10 years.
And I know that you have handled some big names.
Yeah.
Ravanelli, Carboni, to name but two big Italian names. What was that like trying to deal with them?
Brilliant.
Really?
Benito Carboni, I used to play pool with Benito when he was at Villa, and it was always very competitive as well.
Well, sportsmen, they don't play friendlies, do they?
No, we don't. And I wasn't just going to let him win because
you were doing a deal for him.
I'm kind of looking after him at that stage. But and Ravanelli as well. I got to know Fabrizio when he was at Derby, and he went there with Jim Smith. Was there as well.
There's a meeting of minds for you.
Yeah, and but Fabrizio was brilliant, but very professional, but very down to earth. He got time for everybody.
Yes, yeah.
And what you find in the football game, and I'm sure it's the same in your world, Bob, and in the theatre and everything, is that the guys that are right at the top don't have anything to prove. They're really natural. Yeah. Whereas the guys that are just below and just got a...
Yep. You're absolutely right.
They're the ones that give you most problems. They've got a little bit of a chip on the shoulder.
I can't imagine that every manager that you went to see about a deal welcomed you with open arms.
No, not every manager or chairman for that matter. I mean, there's been some of the chairmen or managers or people that you do the deals with. Obviously, it's chief execs now as well. But there's been some interesting characters that I've dealt with. Put it that way.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be too right for me to mention on air which ones.
No.
But,
well, I might be able to guess of one or two along the way, but
there's quite a few of them still there. That's what.
Did that make it difficult that if you went in and you thought, I know how he's going to come, don't you come in here dictating to me, this is what we pay, this is what we do? Yeah. There must have been some of those.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
And there's still, well, I remember doing one deal, and I said to the player, look, and this wasn't a big deal, so it was, but it was the boy just got into the first team, so he he deserved an increase on his contract and new terms. And so we decided. I said, look, these are the parameters that I think you should be on, knowing the club, knowing where you are in your career, what you've achieved, and what have you. And are you happy with this before we go in? Because I think this is where, if we can get to this, are you happy?
Did you take the player in with you when you did these deals, or did you do them by yourself?
Sometimes they did. Sometimes they did, and then usually sometimes they would come in at the beginning of it, and then they might go out. Sometimes it would just be myself and the chairman or the manager. And usually it was managers usually a few years ago. The managers tend to do it less now.
Yeah.
To be honest.
So what happened on this occasion then you were talking about?
Yeah. So we got to a situation where it was just he hadn't quite got to where I knew that the lad should be, and I said, all right, we finished. That's what all we can do. So fortunately, I knew the manager, and I actually just changed the tack a little bit and started talking about the manager's career. So what about that game? All right, if we finished, because we were virtually finished. So we carried on for a couple of minutes talking about what was going on in his career, and eventually, after about 10 minutes talking to him about his career, we got back onto the lad and got him what he wanted.
That's the way to do it. Because I'm guessing, and not making you sound like you're 100, but fairly briefly, I mean, when you were looking for new contracts, you went in and said, please, sir, did you? And they said, this is what we're giving you, sign it or else. Yeah.
There was some... There'll be some really interesting stories about negotiating with Bill. I know with Bill McGarry at Wolves. Well, I didn't have to negotiate with him, but there were one or two later on where it was just as difficult.
Yes.
And it wasn't easy because we didn't have agents then.
No. And it was a whole different game in many, many respects, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Better game today?
It's a different game today.
Yeah.
But the fundamentals are still the same.
Yeah.
As I say, I talk to a lot of the boys now, and I think the fundamentals are still the same. There are some things that have changed for the better, but some for the worse.
Yeah, okay. Mel Eves, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. It's been interesting to look back over your career. Thank you for giving us the time this afternoon. That's where we leave it for today. I'll be back the same time next week. Until then, bye-bye.